sir is taking the class. Yara sir avda no zo hoder wage ma. Kabapo? Auza warteve ande pake wachawa.
Okay, should we start the class? Do you hear me?
Assalamualaikum, sir. Yes, yeah, sir, you can take the class.
Okay. So we have Jibran Azim, Asim Iqbal, Memuna Khan, Palwasha, Saima Bibi. And there is a participant with the name of Vivo 1907.
Sir, that is Noman.
Okay, Noman. Okay, so we take start with the new topic, post-structuralism. Okay, post-structuralism, it is sometimes taken as an extension of structuralism. When we compare post-structuralism with structuralism, so there are certain points. For example, the point of language. If we study language with reference to structuralism and post-structuralism, it is a common point between the two, and we will discuss post-structuralism in detail with reference to language. But there are certain points which make a huge difference between structuralism and post-structuralism, according to which it is not right to say that post-structuralism is an extension of structuralism. Rather, in some ways, it is a reaction against structuralism. So there are two views, that either post-structuralism is an extension of structuralism, or it is a reaction of reaction to structuralism. The way postmodernism is an extension of modernism, and in some ways that is a reaction to modernism. So we will discuss both the views, but our main focus that would be on the role of language. That what is the role of language with reference to structuralism, and I have already discussed that, and we have to extend it in the topic of post-structuralism. So post-structuralism is unthinkable without structuralism. Whenever we want to discuss post-structuralism, the way we have to discuss modernism with reference to postmodernism, in the same way, we have to link post-structuralism with structuralism. And you have to recall the same points of Ferdinand de Saussure when he talked about the status of language, because that was the point of deviation of Ferdinand de Saussure from his predecessors, who normally studied language in the historical domains. But Ferdinand de Saussure, he studied language itself. He did not consider the historical movement of language, or the changes which were seen in the historical ages. So you have to recall those points of Ferdinand de Saussure, and then we have to reconsider the same points in post-structuralism. But in its radical questioning of the structures, or the structuralist faith in language and in objective analysis, it seriously undermines structuralism's achievements. And this is the point of deviation of post-structuralism from structuralism. The structures which I have already explained in the topic of structuralism, there are certain structures. And when we talk about literary structuralism, so I also discussed some of the structures. For example, in case of Roland Barthes, there were 5 codes. Those 5 codes are not all the codes. I discussed only 5 codes. and there are some other codes which I haven't discussed, but those 5 codes mean that in every narrative you have to focus on the 5 codes, and considering those 5 codes can give you some understanding and meaning of that narrative. In the same way, if we take the example of Vladimir Prop, his model about a narrative, when he discussed 100 Russian folk tales, and then he came up with a conclusion that there were certain functions which he derived from the study of all those 100 Russian folk tales. So it means that in every narrative, there can be a combination, or a combination out of all those 31 functions that could be found in any narrative. In the same way, taking the example of Grimus model, which says that there are 6 elements, and in any narrative, those 6 elements can be found. So post-structuralism doesn't follow the same view. Post-structuralism doesn't say that every narrative can be studied in the light of certain structures. And this is the point of objection of post-structuralism on structuralism, or the point of deviation. Post-structuralism continues structuralism's strongly anti-humanist perspective. In anti-humanist, there was a liberal humanistic approach which said that literature is universal, and that literature cannot be studied within the boundaries of certain structures, because they thought that literature is not for a specific age, rather literature is for all the times. That's why some of the writers, they thought, for example, Matthew Arnold said that there is a universal literature, and there is a literature which transcends the barriers of time and space. Now, post-structuralism, we have to compare it with liberal humanism. So post-structuralism doesn't consider the views of liberal humanism. Rather, it moves against the views and conception of the liberal humanism. It is strongly anti-humanist. And what is that anti-humanistic approach? That even that there are certain structures in case of structuralism, that every narrative can be understood by considering some of the structures. And then post-structuralism, it makes it even more prominent and clear. It moves ahead, one step ahead of structuralism, and it even negates those structures, that structures are not, even those structures are not, they are not stable. Those structures are, they're very temporary, and certain temporary arrangement is made in terms of structures in the light of which a narrative can be understood. But that temporary arrangement, that remains a temporary, that is not forever. If we compare this temporary arrangement in case of structuralism by considering certain structures with humanism or liberal humanism, it means that it is an absolutely different direction from the direction of the liberal humanism. It negates liberal humanism. It kicks it out from the domain of this investigation. And instead of those views of timeless literature, and a timeless standard, and a timeless body of writers, that is no more entertained. So post-structuralism, it is anti-humanist, and it closely follows structuralism in its belief that language is the key to our understanding of ourselves and the world. This is yet another point of resemblance with structuralism, that in structuralism, language was a key to understanding the meaning. In post-structuralism, again, language is a key to understanding the world. But the approach, later on I will make it even more clear that what is the difference between the approach of structuralism with reference to language, and understanding of post-structuralist with reference to language. But at least at this stage, it is enough to say that in both the approaches, language is a key to understanding. It is language which constructs reality. It doesn't mean that reality already exists. Rather, whatever exists, that is language. Language is the whole truth. Language is the whole matter. Language is the whole thing that exists. And then what comes after language, that is reality, that is truth. I will make it even more clear later on. Post-structuralism continues structuralism's preoccupation with language. The critics of post-structuralism, they also consider language, the status of language, that really it is language which is most important and it must be considered in order to know about the real status. Let me make it clear that our whole discussion, by our whole discussion, I mean that I discuss these views, the views of structuralism and post-structuralism, but these views are of, for example, Roland Barthes. These views are of some other prominent figures in structuralism and post-structuralism. So these are not my views. Now, what is the reason that we have to discuss this language? Because there was a hurdle, and that hurdle made it impossible for the intellectuals and for the critics to destabilize the most established institutions. Like, it was not possible to criticize a person, a prominent person, by criticizing his or her status. So it was not possible to criticize individuals. It was not possible to criticize the dictators. It was not possible to criticize the powerful people having powerful positions. This language was something which was easily used in order to destabilize the foundations of those institutions. Language के जरिए उन established institutions को criticize करना, this was really possible, and it was done with the help of this language. Later on, I will give you the example of some movement of some students who reacted against the established notions and the established powerful setup. And later on, it was made easier through language. And it is through language that we have got, for example, the understanding about feminist criticism, our understanding about post-colonial criticism, our understanding about Marxist criticism. These prominent views, they were highlighted and they were motivated just with the help of these new notions and views and this new understanding about language. So language is, this is the reason that language is important. But its view of language is wholly different from the structuralist view. In case of post-structuralism, understanding or the study about language, that is different. In fact, language is at the heart of the differences between structuralism and post-structuralism. Language is a much less stable affair than the classical structuralist had considered. This is the major difference between structuralism and post-structuralism. When we look at the understanding of structuralists, they thought that the structures were stable, and those structures were actually constructed by language. And again, those structures, that was the output of language. So it means that the reality or the truth, that was a product of language. But anyhow, we have to focus on the structures. In case of Roland Barthes, those 5 codes exist, and every narrative can be interpreted in the light of those 5 codes. According to the Grimus model, any narrative can be understood or interpreted on the basis of those 6 elements. And same is the case with the other models. So according to structuralism, language was a stable affair. But according to post-structuralism, language is not stable. It is quite fluid. It is fluid. It means that the reality or the product which is given by language, that is also very fluid. And this was actually the contribution of Jacques Derrida. Derrida destabilizes the relationship between signifier and signified. The signifier means the word we hear or read. That is, of course, stable enough, but what it signifies, the meaning, that is, according to Derrida, subject to an inherent instability. Now, the meaning that we have, the meaning of the signifier, that is not a matter of permanent status. That is a matter of very temporary arrangement. And it is not possible to get meaning of a signifier in isolation. in individual capacity. I have already explained it that in order to know the meaning of just one signifier, we have to make a comparison in the form of series. We have to compare one signifier with another signifier, the second signifier with the third signifier, the third with the fourth. Let me compare it with the example of Jacques Derrida. He gave an example. This continuation of comparison of the various signifiers, that no signifier is independent in terms of meaning. The example is of a carpet. It is just like the carpet. For example, a person holding one end of the carpet. एक सिरे से carpet उसने पकड़ा हुआ है, but the other end of the carpet, that is that is a never-ending process. You just keep on rolling it, and it will continue. You never get back the other end. The same is the case with this comparison of the signifiers, that you keep on comparing one signifier with the other signifier. So that makes it ambiguous. It makes the language ambiguous, and it also keeps on the person waiting. You have to wait for the other end. In the case of the carpet, in the same way, you have to keep on waiting for getting the absolute status of a signifier. And when we talk about signifier, then we have to talk about the meaning, the signified. So it means that this process of signification, it keeps on moving. The principles from Derrida's perspective, then language never offers us direct contact with reality. It is not a transparent medium, a window on the world. There is an example, another example. For example, when we talk about the reality and language, we compare it, for example, with the written form of the language. There is, for example, thought. पहले सोच होती है, then there is spoken language, and then there is written language. Keep these 3 points in mind, that there is thought, there is spoken language, and there is written language. Now, the initial form and the beginning form of the language, that was actually spoken language. और उसके बाद जो है, then we get written language. Written language जो है, that was promoted quite later on. So we have to compare the status of reality. That first it is thought, then that thought is expressed in the form of oral language, but then that oral language is converted into the written language. It means that written language, जो reality written language के through हमें मिलती है, that is the least stable, or that is that has a very fluid status, slippery status जो है, जिसको हम कहते हैं. And in terms of copying, for example, the written language, whatever the reality the written language gives us, that reality is a copy or an imitation of the spoken language. But even that spoken language, that is an imitation or copy of the thought. So it means that there is no question of reality. It is just an imitation of the previous copy, and that previous copy, that is an imitation even of the other previous copy. So that is a process of copying, and that is a process of imitation. So therefore, reality doesn't exist. Rather, it is language that gives us a window through which we can look at the reality. The principles of binary opposition, beloved of structuralism, can be deconstructed. This term deconstruction, it was a term introduced by Jacques Derrida. And Derrida, this deconstruction, it is an applied form of post-structuralism. It is a technique which is used in order to analyze a text. Now, this deconstruction, in simple words, I would say that by applying the technique of deconstruction, we destabilize the status of a text, or we disturb the status of a text, or the unity, the so-called unity that we think that a text has a unity, or a text, there was a time that it had a unity. So to disturb that unity, and this was discussed in the form of binary opposition in case of structuralism, that there are two concepts or two values, for example, a positive value and a negative value. Man, for example, that stood for and that stands for positive value, and woman stands for negative value. Day stands for positive value, and night stands for negative value. Colonizer stands for positive value, and the colonized stands for the negative value. That was the understanding about binary opposition. Now, how did Jacques Derrida destabilize even this combination of positive and negative value through deconstruction? He thought that there was a center previously, and everything was compared with that center. So there was a center, and then there was a periphery. Uske ird gird, you just move on, and you you just move away from the center. So those are peripheries. Now there is a center and there are peripheries. Those peripheries, they have to look at the center, and it is with reference to the center that they gain their importance. They do not have any importance in themselves. बजाते खुद उनकी कोई अहमियत नहीं होती है. Their importance that can be studied only through their comparison with the center. So in the same way, man was the center and woman was in the periphery. The colonizer was in the center and the colonized were in the periphery. And in the same way, in the other aspects of life, we can have an analysis of the center and periphery. Now, Jacques Derrida said that when we focus on the positive and negative values, for example, man and woman, the colonizer and the colonized. So it is not just the center which has an importance. It is not just the center which is significant. Rather, equally significant is even the periphery. That periphery is also negative, is also significant. So it is not just man who is significant. Even woman is equally significant. It is not the white man. For example, when Kipling he talked about white man's burden, or when he talked about the superior status of white man in the overland mail, or for example, some other novelists and poets, they talked about the superior status or the central status of the white men. So Jacques Derrida said that it is not just the center which is significant, even the periphery is also equally significant. How? Let me explain it. Man, if I take the example of man and woman, that the meaning of man, that is possible only with the meaning of woman. If there had not been any woman, so man would not have got the same status. And again, just recall my point of the process of signification, that we compare one signifier with the other signifier. Now, the signifier of man, it doesn't have any meaning in itself. The signifier of man is not independent. The signifier of man is completely dependent on the status or the presence of the signifier of woman. So it means that man is incomplete, and man becomes complete only when we compare the signifier of man with the signifier of woman. So it means that the meaning that we have about man, that meaning is given to us from the meaning of woman. It means that both are equally important. In the same way, if there had not been night, night जो कि negative value है, day is positive and night is negative. Now we have understanding about day, but this understanding about day or the meaning of day, that is possible only with the meaning of night. So it means that night is equally important. If there had not been any night, so day would not have been possible. They would not have been significant. In the same way, if we talk about the colonizer and the colonized, or in some other ways, if I talk about the white man and the black man, that would be the most suitable example, because and that is clear. If there had not been black color, so white color would not have been that much important. It is just because of the black color that white color has got its significance. So that was the point of deconstruction. This is called deconstruction. This was the applied form of the post-structuralism. And now this binary opposition, it was not extended to the point that was extended in case of post-structuralism. So the binary opposition, they were stable, but in post-structuralism, in post-structuralism, they were given a new meaning. Rather, the positive value was negated, and the positive value was given a meaning uh, with the help of the negative value. From Derrida's perspective, then, language never offers us direct contact with the reality. It is not a transparent medium, a window on the world. Rather, reality doesn't exist. It is through language that we get the reality, and it is with the help of that language that we get the reality. So it means that reality is an output of the language. Deconstruction is the name given to the critical operation by which such oppositions can be partly undermined, or by which they can be shown partly to undermine each other in the process of textual meaning. I have already explained it. I think it is Peter Barry who has used a term for deconstruction, that is uh, textual harassment. That with the help of deconstruction, we actually disturb the text. The so-called unity that we have, or we think about a text, even in terms of structuralism, that unity is destabilized. In literary terms, a text never achieves closure, which quite literally means that its case can never be closed. There is no final meaning. The text remains a field of possibilities. Recall the same example of the carpet. One end we have in our hand, but the other end we do not get. That keeps on rolling. So same is the case with the text. Now, there was a time when author was having an authority, so that was the status of stability. That meaning was stable, and meaning was not fluid. So the status was a closed entity. The text was a closed entity, and author had the authority to interpret. But in terms of Jacques Derrida, in terms of post-structuralism, a text doesn't have any end. This is what we mean by this phrase, a text never achieves closure. And because the text remains a field of possibilities. So a text, it is open to interpretation, and it is open to analysis. This analysis now is the responsibility of the reader. The reader has the right um, to analyze and interpret the text. But this analysis is not in terms of superficial reading. This analysis is in terms of digging out the thing which is not explored, or to expose the hidden meanings. This understanding of, for example, the overland mail, that was not in the mind of Rudyard Kipling. Our reading of the Tempest, it was actually not according, and it was not in the mind of Shakespeare. This meaning of the master and slave relationship in the play of the Tempest, this is actually the meaning given by the reader. Or, for example, the understanding of uh, the understanding of the novel A Passage to India, that might not have been in the mind of the writer. That meaning of the colonizer and the colonized, the master and the slaves, that is actually the meaning given by the reader. Uh, Now, the point is that there is no final meaning. This final meaning, again, it refers to the previous point of Ferdinand de Saussure, that a meaning is always arbitrary, or the relationship between the signifier and signified that is arbitrary. It means that one signifier, which stands for one signified, one meaning, that might be only for a temporary period of time. And a time might come that the meaning will change. So there is no final meaning. This comparison of one word with the other word, or one signifier with the other signifier, it will go on. In the same way, a text doesn't have any end of the meaning. We just keep on analyzing it, and just keep on interpreting it, and with the passage of time we just come up with the new meaning and with the new understanding. So a text is never closed. It is open to interpretation, and it gives us new meaning. It doesn't have any final meaning. For Derrida, the meaning of a text is always unfolding just ahead of the interpreter, unrolling in front of him or her like a never-ending carpet whose final edge never reveals itself. The final edge, it is always hidden from the interpreter. Thus, meaning is a never-ending process, just like a never-ending final edge of the carpet, the same example of the carpet. The deconstructive approach unveils the working of ideologies to legitimize or naturalize power. The major role of an ideology, uh, that is to make something natural. And when something is made natural, it becomes acceptable. Anything when that is put into a particular ideology, so that seems to be natural, that seems to be legitimate, and then people accept it. You can think about any aspect of life, just put it in the framework of a particular ideology, uh, and you will accept it. There is a theorist of with reference to ideology, and that is Lois Althusser. He is very prominent with reference to ideology, understanding of ideology, that what is an ideology and what are the major functions of ideology. But at this stage, let me uh, just clarify this point, that the major function of an ideology is to make something natural, to make something seem real. When you are convinced that it is a reality, you accept it. When you feel that there is some political force behind a certain slogan, so you